Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Yes, what I think some of us feared the most is now finally happened. This is an article announcing that Tinashe Chitsunge from Glen View 7 has just been murdered by what many people believe were Zanu PF thugs. He was in broad daylight. He was out campaigning. Some say he was out doing door-to-door campaigns. Others say he was going to a meeting. But what we feared has happened. The violence, so far it has managed to get many people injured, beaten up, harassed, and so forth. But no one had been killed. This Tinashe is the first victim of this campaigning period. I think what makes this so tragic is that this was totally avoidable. There really was no need for Zimbabwe to go into these elections without meaningful reforms to ensure there is no violence. So when you speak to some of the opposition supporters, that's when you realize how little they understand what's going on here. Because some of them think that is normal. This is part and parcel of elections. It's not. This is madness. This young man is not the first person to be murdered in political violence, harassed, beaten, and so forth. This, so far, has been the common thing. Why have we not stopped? Why is this carried on? This is the question that Tinashe's relatives should be asking themselves. How many people are we going to see murdered in cold blood? Tinashe was stoned, according to some reports. It must have been a cruel death. What for? Was it really necessary? The answer is no, it was not necessary. This could have been avoided. And that is the most important message to send out. This was totally avoidable, totally unnecessary. It really is disappointing that MDC had the golden opportunity to implement the democratic reforms during the 2008 to 2013 GNU. That was the golden opportunity. That was our get out of jail card. The country had gone through a really particularly obnoxious, violent election where Zanu PF had blatantly cheated. And SADC, unlike in the past, decided that they were not going to endorse Zanu PF's victory, and thus forced them to sign the global political agreement of 2008, in which the party was to go into a power sharing arrangement with MDC and most important of all, to implement the democratic reforms which would have ended this culture of violence, which would have restored state institutions like the police, the courts, the army to do their duty to keep law and order. MDC failed to implement even one token reform throughout those 5 GNU years. Not even one token reform. One of the greatest achievements that Zanu PF or Robert Mugabe must have boasted to his grave was that he was able to con Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends and their naive and incredibly gullible supporters into believing the party could win elections without any need for even one meaningful reform being implemented. And hence, the reason why Morgan Tsvangirai failed to implement even one reform. He was so cocksure that his party would win the 2013 without reforms. When he realized after the election that he could not, the penny dropped, at least with some of their party faithful. That elections could not be won without reforms, that it was futile to keep on participating in these flawed elections. Notable leaders like Tendai Biti, after the 2018 elections, admitted that participating in the flawed elections was absolutely meaningless. This was Tendai Biti admitting it in 2015. Participating in these elections was only serving to give the dictatorship legitimacy. His colleague, David Coulthard, went one step further and explained this in his book. In it, David Coulthard admitted that the whole 2013 election process was so flawed, so illegal, that the only logical step was to withdraw, which would have compelled SADC, the regional body, to hold Zanu PF to account. But he explained why he and his colleagues could not make that decision, make that final decision, and stand up and say, no, we are not participating in these elections. The reason for it, he admitted in his book, it was greed. Both MDCT and MDCN saw the opportunity to participate in these elections and get a few gravy train seats. In fact, that was the main reason why they failed to implement the democratic reforms throughout the 5 years of the GNU. Greed. Mugabe had paid them, given them ministerial limousines, paid them very generous salaries and allowance to participate in the elections was unthinkable to these guys. Sorry, to implement the democratic reforms was unthinkable. So they forgot all about the reforms. They did not even implement one meaningful reform. And towards the end of the GNU, they were convinced they would win those elections without reforms. And that's hence the reason why they wanted to participate in those elections without reforms. When they were beaten, the likes of Tinashe saw the light. And I'm sure they must have tried to talk their colleagues into realizing the same thing, just the futility of participating in these elections without reforms. But when they realized that none of their colleagues were paying any attention, both Tinashe and David Coulter decided to participate. This is why we are where we are. The opposition is participating in these elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that Zanu PF will resort to wanton violence to win the elections. But because they are after the few seats they know Zanu PF is giving away out there, they will keep on participating. This is our curse in Zimbabwe. We cannot pretend that we don't know what is happening here. We know what is happening here. We are just keeping our fingers crossed that Tinashe will be maybe the first and last person to be killed in this rat race. It is a rat race. This is not an election, it's a rat race. The opposition are participating out of greed, pure and simple. And we can't pretend anything else. And many lives are being put at risk for the sake of the few seats, gravy train seats. And by participating, Chamisa and friends know they'll be giving Zanu PF legitimacy. And thus perpetuating the dictatorship. Alas, for the majority of ordinary Zimbabweans, they are left really with no choice. If the main party is participating and the main opposition party is participating, I think for most of the ordinary Zimbabweans out there, they feel like it's not their place to question, why are we participating? And so they participate. And so they join in this meaningless electoral process. It's a tragedy that desperation is forcing most of them into this election. If you are living in the rural area, you don't have much of a choice. You have to participate. Zanu PF will coerce you into participating. Those in the urban centers who should know better are so desperate for change. They are participating because they think that is the only way to bring about change. They risk their lives and limbs to elect the opposition into power on the understanding the opposition will implement reforms. They didn't understand what those reforms are. And still, many of them don't understand what those reforms are. And so it's no surprise that when MDC, Morgan Tsvangirai and company failed to implement even one meaningful reform, these people did not understand what was going on. They accepted it as part of the politics. Just as much as they accept now participating in these elections because they think that is the only way they're going to bring about change. They've been told by the opposition that Chamisa has devised ways of strategies for winning rigged elections. And these people are naive and gullible. They believe anything they are told. And so they believe this winning in rigged elections. The very idea itself is pathetic. We have already accepted that Zanu PF has got the power to rig the elections. And we have got to do our best to win rigged elections. It really is tragic. And unfortunately, millions of the MDC supporters and ordinary members of the public out there, they don't see any way out. They've been conned by the opposition into believing that is actually the way out. They've given up on their right to free, fair, and credible elections. Giving up that right in favor of the opportunity to win rigged elections. That's how pathetic their situation is. Of course, they were trading in gold for fool's gold. And even after 43 years of the Zanu PF mafiosi rigging elections, they still don't understand what's going on. That is the tragedy of Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is a failed state because we have got some incredibly naive and gullible people. And unfortunately, they've never been given a chance for somebody to explain what these reforms are. And so they've never really understood what they are. And unfortunately, these naive and gullible people have got the vote. And they voted some equally naive and gullible individuals into power. And some of them have turned out to be tyrants as well, murderous tyrants. And now wresting power from these murderous thugs on the one hand, corrupt and incompetent opposition leaders on the other, all held together by a naive and incredibly gullible electorate, is going to be the challenge of our generation. It's not going to be easy at all. The second item tonight I wanted to cover was the announcement that the Supreme Court that they've set aside the ruling by the High Court in Bulawayo, where the 12 CCC members were being stopped from participating. In the earlier discussion, I explained that that High Court judgment, I happen to have had a chance to look at the High Court judgment itself. That ruling was ridiculous. It was pathetic. If anything at all, it really went to show how corrupt and incompetent our judiciary had become. The CCC's nomination papers had been submitted on time. And according to the rules, they were submitted, all those who were in the queue to submit their nomination papers at the close of time, they were accepted and processed. That is what happened. Why the High Court judge pretended he could change the rules, it's unbelievable. Because the consequences of that ruling was this had happened across the country, in other courts, nomination courts across the land. And up to 156 other potential candidates were going to be affected, besides the 12 in Bulawayo, which created chaos. ZEC has not printed the ballot papers because it had to wait until it learned what is the fate of all these people. Should they be on the ballot paper or not? And so it has missed its target. Supposed to have printed the ballot papers by now and posted them so that those entitled to postal votes would have received them and sent them back. It missed that target completely. We are now, today is the 3rd of August. Voting is on the 23rd of August, 20 days from now. At least the parliamentary and all the other, well, it affected actually all parliamentary, presidential, and local council, this ruling by the High Court. So that one has been sorted out. The presidential one, there's still the issue of Kasukuwere to be decided. He is fighting to have his ruling that he didn't qualify because he had been out of the country for 18 months to be reversed. And and so the presidential one is to be decided. The nomination paper, at least for the presidential one, can wait while they sort out this mess. And the ones for the council, for the local authority and the parliamentary, at least the decision has been made. ZEC can start arranging to get them printed. The presidential one has got to be made quick smart, because short of postponing the voting day, it is really hard to see how we're going to get back to voting on the 23rd and allowing unless they're going to decide to forget about the postal votes, allow those people with entitled to postal votes to post them and get them back so that they could be counted together with the rest of the ballots. We don't know about that. But this is a mess that was totally could have been avoided. And it would have been surprising if actually uh, the Supreme Court had upheld the decision of the High Court. And they did not. So that's where we are. Good evening, Ben. Sorry you were late in coming in. I can see that.
Good evening. Sorry, yes, I was kind of delayed. I was on my way. Good evening to our viewers. Thank you for joining us. Or rather, thank you for allowing me to join you guys.
Well, you joined when we had the first item. Actually, I don't know whether you had seen it. Was the first person to be killed in these elections. This
Oh
young
yes,
man,
yes
Tinashe.
I did. Like to say my condolences to the family and friends. Yeah, it's very tragic to see, loss of life in an event that is supposing to be more of beneficial to the people of Zimbabwe. Now it's turning tragic, which is very, very sad. We shouldn't be in modern day politics. You shouldn't be finding any of this here. Violence and forcing people and doing so much. Uh, it's quite sad, really.
Yeah. Well, somebody there is commenting. Willard is saying Zimbabwe will never change. No free and fair elections. Well, Willard, you're absolutely right. As long as we do not implement the reforms, let's be honest, Chamisa's promise to deliver change because he has got strategies of winning rigged elections is it's an oxymoron, you know. In other words, he's accepting that Zanu PF has got the right to rig elections. And that right includes using violence. And without reforms, I honestly don't see how we can possibly have free and fair elections. But what personally I would like to see the uh, ordinary Zimbabweans out there, relatives of people like this young man who has just been killed, starting to ask these political leaders to explain why they failed to implement reforms. And like you to start asking why, when are we going to have free, fair, and credible elections? This issue of trying to win rigged elections has not worked. That is where we should be going. And I think Zimbabweans themselves have got to realize that gone are the days when you could trust wholeheartedly the opposition to look after your interests. In this case here, the opposition is not looking after the ordinary person's interest there, as David Coulthard explained in his book. We can pretend we can't read or we can't understand, we don't understand that, but it's ridiculous. We are only uh, fooling ourselves.
The
So,
sad.
well, Ben, I was going to just, like I said, I'd already started. So I think we can give your closing remarks there so we can close.
Oh, okay. So this, I would like to say, the sad thing about incidences like this or tragedies like this is that, these people that are fighting and killing each other, it's you and me. And it's not going to affect the ones at the top, whether it be Triple C, whether it be Zanu PF. It's not going to affect them. They're going to go to their houses, they're going to sleep, and they're going to be with their families. And you will find out that probably these people know each other. I don't think somebody can come from, he was in Glen View. I don't think this person would have come maybe as far as Bedbridge or whatever. It's somebody that is local within the area or within Harare. They've probably even shared a drink or two, or they have met somewhere in the road, along the road. Now, why are you fighting? What are you supposing to gain from it? You see, some of these things I also blame us as individuals. We are, as citizens, we are not doing the right thing. We're not doing justice for ourselves. You are quite right. Why we got better things to do, like asking questions from both political parties. Where are the reforms? We want free and fair elections. Why are the ballot papers getting delayed? People need to know all those things. So there is a lot that we could be doing that is more constructive than ending and taking lives. So I hope, going forward, let's stop. Look, everybody went to, that went for the liberation struggle. They fought for one man, one vote, equal rights. Why are you then fighting amongst yourselves to take each other's right? Now life has been lost. I think it's very, very unfair, and unfair to those that went to the war to go and fight, and unfair to us that are doing such, foolish acts. I hope we can learn going forward that this is not even necessary. And again, my condolences to the family and friends in this, sad moment in their lives. Thank you.
Yeah, it is tragic. I posted the link there. I don't know whether some of our viewers out there had the opportunity to join us, but I don't know whether they are. But if you are, please, join us, and we'll hear your comments on it. And so, while I give my quick remark to see whether somebody will join us, I think this is something, like I said, that could and should and must be avoided. This cycle of trying to hold flawed elections, this idea that we can win rigged elections, is an oxymoron. We have traded gold for fool's gold. Once you have accepted that Zanu PF has carte blanche powers to rig the elections, you cannot complain about Zanu PF using violence, cheating, marching people to go and vote. You cannot complain about that. That is part and parcel of accepting that Zanu PF has got carte blanche powers to rig elections. That is the problem. And I really would be really annoyed with our opposition leaders come the 24th, the day after the election, 24th of August, when they start complaining, making a big mountain of how Zanu PF has rigged the elections, crying buckets of crocodile tears, because they knew Zanu PF was rigging these elections. They've been warned that Zanu PF is rigging these elections. They've been warned that Zanu PF will use violence. Zanu PF will be killing people. And now we have got somebody who has lost their life. This is absolutely an outrage, particularly for the opposition leaders who were in the GNU, who had the golden opportunity to implement the reforms. But even those opposition leaders who were not, you cannot deny that the present political system is such that you cannot uh, bring about any meaningful change. Participating is only giving legitimacy to the regime. That argument, we cannot keep on pretending it is not there. It is there. And we really should deal with it and stop pretending and embarrassing ourselves. But 45 years after independence, we still cannot hold free, fair, and credible elections in this day and age. It's absolutely ridiculous. That is my final word. And to the listeners out there, it's a pity. And I join you, Ben, in expressing my condolences. It's a pity that people are being pushed into this. People are desperate for change. And I can understand why the people are determined to continue participating. I think the ordinary person out there has never been given a choice here. Once Zanu PF has decided they're going to participate, and the opposition have decided they are going to participate, really, the ordinary person there has got, no bolt hole at all. They feel, well, they've got to participate. And so they are participating. And so they are being involved in these running battles with Zanu PF supporters. The police are absolutely helpless. It will be surprising if the people who were responsible for this murder are even arrested. If they are, in the past, we all know that they've been arrested and nothing else happens. Never been brought to court. They've never been convicted. And even in the odd case when they've been convicted, the Zanu PF leadership has always pardoned them. So, that's one of the things that has helped to keep the whole thing going. They know that Zanu PF will pardon them. And Zanu PF is desperate to win these elections. They have been in power for 43 years. Their appetite for wealth has been unbelievable. They're not going to give up power. We can stop this madness, and we must stop this madness. Thank you very much. And thank you very much, Ben, for joining. And good night.
Thank you. Good night.